Okay.
Lots of opinions for people who aren't on yet. I'm so glad when people share like that.
All right.
Okay. Lots of opinions for people who aren't on yet.
Oh, okay. Mute that. Okay. Admit all. All right. I'm just looking through. I'm looking for. I know I saw Gretchen.
Here's Gretchen.
Yeah.
So we have a quorum.
There you are. Thank you. Okay, Gretchen, you're unmuted, and then you can mute and unmute yourself as you see fit.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, I see Tom. Tom, I think you're in as Colleen. I'm gonna unmute you. And you know what? Admit all. And then I see Michael. And I can rename you. Just like that, no forms necessary. We aim to please at the DMV.
Hey, geez.
I see Scott. Okay, good. Good. 2 minutes to go. And oh, I think Kim's trying on another device now just to get her audio worked out so she can hear us. There's Scott. Scott, I'm unmuting you, so you can choose to mute and unmute as you see fit to participate. I see Stephanie. You're unmuted and you can do what you need to do. Good. Okay.
I think we have a double case of CC.
Double case of CC. We have a lot of initials, CCs and yep, and KFs and etc. So let's see. I see we have Randy, Gretchen, you, me. We're missing Katie
and Jenny.
And Jenny. I was just looking for Jenny. I don't remember seeing her name in it, but it was going pretty quickly. So. We have 76 participants, 77. Just an FYI, we're also streaming live on YouTube. So if you don't plan to, do public comment, etc., you can also just switch to YouTube and get the same feed. Okay.
The agenda.
There's Katie. I see. Yep, and I see Katie. Yep. Nice.
Ira from Brooklyn.
I know. I saw. That's what I'm chuckling at.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can rename people.
Probably want to.
All right. Good. All right, Jeff. Just so you know, we are at 7:31 now. Sorry. Katie, I am unmuting you now, so you're unmuted, but you can mute yourself, and as you see fit. Michael, I'm doing the same with you, so you have the ability to jump in as you need to.
Okay, I think we just have one more person waiting. Get.
Oh, sorry. Yep, you're right. And yep. Good.
No.
Okay, we'll get started. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Easton Board of Education, Tuesday, May the 12th at 7:31 p.m. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 30, 2020 special joint meeting of the Easton, Reading, and Region 9 Boards of Education. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Randy's raising his hand.
Okay, Randy, you can unmute yourself. Thank you. I do have a second.
Second, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
5-0. I still don't see Jenny, so I'm.
Yeah, I don't see her either.
It actually would be 4-0 and
Oh, I see
one
Jenny.
abstention.
I see Jenny.
Okay.
Yep.
For the record, it's 4 yes, 0 no, and 1 abstention because Katie wasn't at that meeting.
Yep.
Okay, next order of business is
Wait, the special meeting?
the special meeting of Easton Reading Region 9.
Oh, the
Board.
Easton, I thought you meant
Yeah,
the,
the
I thought you were talking about our special meeting. Sorry.
No, the tri-board.
Well, that's next, as a matter of fact.
Okay, sorry, I was confused.
That's okay. Entertain a motion to accept the March 31st, 2020 Easton Board of Education special meeting as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Gretchen?
I can't tell.
Gretchen?
It's Gretchen. Gretchen seconded.
Oh, Gretchen, okay. Any discussion? No, all in favor, raise your hand.
All right.
Aye.
Very good. That's 6-0. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. I think the way that we'd like to work this is if you raise your hand in the screen, John and I will try to do our best to find you in the order that you raise your hand. So
I see Nikki and then Adam.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, Nikki, you're up, but you need to get unmuted. Okay, good.
I just unmuted. And if you can please name and street.
Okay. Say Chase Caldow, 99 Staples Road.
Chase Caldowy, 99 Staples Road.
Okay, now go ahead.
I really appreciate how much Miss Turner, my teacher, has done for me and my school and my classmates.
Camden Caldowy, 99 Staples Road. Miss Scholes has been such great to me and my whole class during this time, quarantine time. And I'm really thankful for her because without her, I wouldn't be able to get any of my work done.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
And Nikki Caldowy, 99 Staples Road. I just have to say, it's been really challenging time with, the homeschooling. And if it wasn't for those teachers, as well as all the teachers and staff putting in their time through this completely unprecedented time right now, I don't know where we would be. So I just want to thank all of them and the fact that they have to go through right now, on top of that, the pressures of not knowing if they have a job, not knowing what grade they might be teaching, not knowing what new curriculum they might be teaching. It's just not fair to them. So I just wanted to say that, and just, I respect all the people on the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance who donate, who volunteer their time. I'm obviously very disappointed in the number last night, as I think many people are. The part that I'm having a really hard time with is I don't understand how we can even put a number on a budget right now when we are in unprecedented times. We don't know if we're going to open school. We don't know what it will look like if we do. We don't know if we will need PPE. And we definitely don't know what these children will be needing psychologically, emotionally, and academically. And it's just really hard to even think about the fact that we're putting a number on it. I just think it's really premature that the Board of Finance was adamant about doing it last night. I know they have a meeting tomorrow night and they still force the issue. So I just, it's really hard to know what trauma these kids are going to endure when this is over. And we weren't asking a lot of the town, even though I know it's difficult times right now, but people live here for the town. People live here for the school. And we're going to have a lot more people living here soon because they're fleeing New York City like it's their jobs right now, literally. So thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Adam, I think you're up next. John, can you unmute Adam?
You should be able to go now.
He still shows, okay, there you go. There you go.
There we
Adam.
go. Adam Parker, 70 Wedgewood Drive. Put my thoughts on paper just to keep it efficient. I want to start by thanking you, Jeff Parker, as well as Dr. McMorrin and Mr. Rice for enduring what turned into a full public deposition last night at the Board of Finance meeting. You gentlemen stayed calm, you presented facts, and did not succumb to the level of unprofessionalism and gamesmanship that was on the other side of you. To put it lightly, as a parent and a resident of this town, I am outraged and disgusted with the outcome of last night's Board of Finance meeting and that unfolded during it. I sincerely hope these boys who conducted themselves the way they did last night don't call themselves leaders within this community. Community leaders find ways to meet the needs of their town in bipartisan fashion and professionally. Community leaders don't step on the throats of the town's children to save taxpayers about $100 a year. Here we are again, needing to have to watch you play musical chairs and put together an operating model for the school system with substantially less money than what you require. My only hope is that as a board, you can manage to make the puzzle pieces fit with as little impact to the children as possible. Once again, I hate to say it, but it's time to get creative, leave no stone unturned as to how this can work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Adam. Next, I think is Christy. John, is it you?
I see Carolyn as well. Is it Christy? Did you have your hand up?
She does,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, good.
Christy Zagowski, 181 Adams Road. I want to just extend a big thank you to Jeff and to Tom McMorrin for all the work you guys have done on this budget. I know you started the process a lot earlier this year, back in October and November, and really put a lot of time, effort, and energy, and it is much appreciated. And I think that coming into last night's meeting and having the proposal on the table that you did set a good tone. But again, just thank you for all your work. We know you put in countless hours of time on this and really dedicate yourselves to doing what's best for our schools. So just wanted to let our appreciation be known.
Thank you, Christy. Carolyn, I think Carolyn's up next.
I too, Carolyn Oppenheim, 25 Hunting Ridge Road. I too want to thank Jeff, Dr. McMorrin, and Scott for not only conducting yourself above what the fray, but for going in, as was asked of you by all of us in the town, to go in with the number that we saw. You know, we think it's fair. It feels very unfair the way it is now, and I know you know that, and I know you agree with it. But Jeff, I particularly want to thank you for really standing there, and when they were like throwing around numbers that were ridiculous, just telling them why, how it was unacceptable, and how it was in fact going to decimate the schools. You know, every year this is hard and gets harder and harder to watch, but we know that you're going to do everything you can, and we hope that, of course, the teachers will be the first to be saved but we want to make sure that we know that you're supported. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands, but there's 100 participants. I mean, there's 100 folks on this, and my screen doesn't show me everyone. John, can you see if we got?
Yeah, I don't see anybody else raising their hands. Nobody in the participant window. If you're unfamiliar with how to raise your hand, you show participant window, and then there's a little link there to raise your hand that you can do, or you can turn your video on and wave at us, and I'll look through.
I don't see anyone else.
No, it doesn't look like there's anyone else.
Okay. All right. Board member comment. Let's see. I'll go. John, I'll start with you, and then I'm going to work my way across the across the screen.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, first off, thank you. Yes, of course, Jeff. Grace under pressure. You know, it reminded me of a grilling, you know, in the Senate, people shaking their fists and you know, shouting out some ridiculous things, and you held your composure and advocated very you know, well for the schools and the children. So thank you, Jeff. Tom and Scott and everyone else who did work to prepare us for that. Thank you so much. I would say the one thing in my mind that I think was lost in the narrative last night, that the Board of Finance very conveniently, certain members of the Board of Finance, you know, conveniently forgot, was how we got here and how we approach this outside of the COVID pandemic. And I think the thing that was lost was that we have, for about a dozen years, seen very austere conditions, very small increases to the budget over time. And that has taken a toll on our teachers, on our administrators, on our class sizes, on our buildings. And the idea that when you add the COVID crisis to that terrible witch's brew, that somehow it comes out that we need less money to do the right things and save education in this town is absurd. I firmly believe that the education in this town needs to be saved, because we have done such a great job of keeping the budgets low, but we this year as a Board of Education decided across party lines together that we did need to spend a little more money, and then COVID happened and we lost that thread. And I think it's a shame. And you know, I think Adam, you're right. We're gonna do the best we can. And Carolyn, you know, and others who have said this is, we're gonna try to figure out how to put the puzzle pieces together, and we're gonna get it as creative as we can. Yes, but there is a limit, and the reckoning will come. You know, if we can save it this year, great. But it could be next year, it could be the year after, maybe, but we really can't go much longer at this pace. We have to do something to change the tide. That's it for me, Jeff.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, John. Randy, you're next on my screen. Comment?
Sure. I guess I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction. I was disappointed in last night, and that's probably an understatement. But I think the positives, if there's anything to take out of this, I think it's Jeff. It's the direction that you took this back in the fall last year, with getting out in front and say educating, but re-educating the Board of Finance, because frankly, we live this every month. They don't. And it was evident last night, even for some members on the Board of Finance that have been there for a long time. There were clear numbers that, you know, certain people know better than to assume a number when you cut a teacher. So to me, it's an re-education process with the Board of Finance, and dragging them to our meetings and force feeding them the information that we take as second nature, second hand now. And I think we'll have a better result. That's my take on it. I'm going to remain optimistic that we can convince folks in the Board of Finance and across town that they can allocate more money to our schools. So they have to, they need to. So that's all.
Thank you, Randy. Gretchen? Oops, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, my dogs were barking. I was actually going to take in a similar direction as Randy. I mean, it was quite obvious last night that numerous members of the Board of Finance just don't understand what it takes from a basic level to be in a school, to be in a classroom, to be an administrator. I mean, the things that they were mentioning were just ridiculous. But I feel like, in some respect, they actually didn't even care, which I think is worse. So I don't know how we change that. And obviously, to those of you who have made comments before, we are going to do the very best we can because we do understand and we certainly do care.
Thank you, Gretchen. Katie Reed.
Hi, I just wanted to commend you, Jeff, and Tom and Scott for speaking with such grace and persistence last night, so calmly in the face of really a torrent of opposition. And I want to also thank so many of you Easton residents who, I mean, over 100 people, and people were clamoring to be on the Zoom last night, but for your presence and for having sent your emails to the Board of Finance and for your support of all of us on the Board of Education.
Thank you, Katie. Jenny, you're muted. Here, okay.
Better?
Yep, there you go.
Before I start comments, I think we're in the same boat we were in last night. John, I just want to mention that people are messaging me that they can't get into the meeting, that we're maxed at 100. So I don't want to be in that same firing range, everybody clamoring to get in that we were last night.
Yeah, so we should be fine. We have a 500 limit on this. So I don't know, it may be people coming into the waiting room and me not approving them quickly enough. So it could be that.
I don't know. People are getting a message that there's a max of 100. That's what people.
It shouldn't be. There may be a lag or something. People can also, anyone who's on right now, you can see this live on YouTube as well, and that will free up spots as well. So you can go to live YouTube and you can find this there live as well.
So how would they do that? Go to the Facebook page, or?
I'm gonna just put the link up. Yeah, I'll put that on. Yep, Christy.
We did, since a couple people were messaging me as well, sorry to interrupt, but we did share it on Peeps and the PTO page, the YouTube link. So
thank you.
We're saying they couldn't get it. So
I see 24 people are on there right now. Yep. Okay, good.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have that same frustration for folks.
Yep.
All right, Jeff, I borrowed your idea of writing things down to try to make it go more quickly. My comments are mostly about gratitude. Jeff, thank you for leading the charge last night. You fought for our kids every minute of the 2.5 hours you were on that call. You maintained a professional demeanor and showed incredible patience in the face of very disappointing behavior. Thank you for representing us in such a positive way. I want to thank Tom, Scott, and the administrators and faculty that were on the call. As Tara so eloquently apologized to the students who were watching last night, I too want to acknowledge how incredibly challenging it is for our teachers to live and work through this process. We appreciate your engagement at every level, and I continue to be blown away by the work you are doing for our kids. I want to thank Art Lasky, Paul Lindorfer, Tara Gottlieb, and Devin Weibel for their thoughtful and sometimes impassioned remarks last night. We must work together with the entire Board of Finance, but I was especially appreciative of your work to protect the integrity of our schools. I have to mention, didn't like everything that was said, but even Andy Ketchel for holding the line, and Matt Gatchie throwing the playbook away and upping the number. When he added to Andy's number, I about fell off my chair. So that was a welcomed turn of tone for the evening. And all in all, while it wasn't where we hoped to be, I'm grateful we are not going into our meeting tonight in even worse shape. I think we need to acknowledge that other systems are making far more drastic cuts even than this. So hang on to that. And then thank you to the public for your attendance and commentary through the process. I am glad to be part of a board that values and welcomes public comment. And as a town, I hope we will continue to work toward all public board meetings, allowing for members of the public to share their thoughts. Lastly, there was a lot of anger and frustration after last night's meeting. And I just hope that we can really start tonight with a clean, fresh slate. And that everybody, public, us, boards aside, we can just take this number and do the best we possibly can with it.
Okay, Jenny, thank you. I think there were an awful lot of things that went on last night, and some of them were disappointing and some of them were uplifting. But I think at this point, the most important thing is we need to move on. The Board of Finance is part of our life here with the Board of Education. We have to work with them. We have to work as well as we can with them. And I think we can do that. I'm very proud of this, of our Board of Education. You've got 6 people that are all pulling the oar in the same direction, who care about kids, who want the best for your kids. And finally, just this continued outpouring of people coming to meetings. I mean, my gosh, I was so thankful when the PTO started to serve coffee and cookies. I thought that might, generate some more folks at the Keller meetings. But apparently, if you want to get a crowd, you have to do it this way. So again, thanks for your help. Thanks for your continuing support. It's very much appreciated. And we'll now move to item number 5, which is the building administrator's report. Tom, what order do you want to do this in? Tom McMorrin. You want me to go Stephanie first? You're muted, my friend. I don't know that that's ever happened.
We're going to start with Susan Kaplan.
Oh, okay. Very good. Sue, you have a report for us.
Good evening, everybody. Appreciate all your comments that came already. I'd like to start off with a very different item. And believe it or not, the PTO is offering to give us some money for a grant for our music department through all this going on. And I want to thank them publicly also for our Teacher Appreciation Week and finding a way virtually to make everybody on our staff feel special. And I want to thank all the parents who wrote to teachers and showed their support. It was wonderful. So our music teachers have proposed a grant, and the PTO is offering to give us 1/4 shy of $2,000, $1,999.75 to purchase keyboards for our music department, predominantly to be used in our general music class, but will be able to be shared with all the music classes in a variety of ways. And at this point in time, I'm asking, because of the dollar amount and the board policy, I'm asking for the Board of Ed approval to accept this grant from the PTA for our music department. That's item number 1.
Okay. You can go through items two if there is an item 2, and then we can take the request up once you're done.
Okay, thank you. So the rest is actually my building report. So I'll go into that, Jeff, if that's okay.
Sure.
So today I attended a CAS, a Connecticut Association of Schools seminar run by a good friend of our district, Joanne Freiberg. You may remember her name from the State Department of Education.
She's good.
Annie and Michael, I know were able to attend as well. And that combined with an article that I would think is really valuable reading for every member of the Board of Education and every educator. From the Atlantic this month, it was dated April 17th, and it's called What Happened to American Childhood? And this was an article written pre-pandemic about children and anxiety and social emotional health of children. And I reference that because that's exactly what Joanne Freiberg was talking about today, about the impacts that the pandemic, the impact that it is having on children right now, and then on children when they return to our buildings when that's possible. So with that, I'd like to just share that our student support staff, and that's every one of them, are still continuing in a virtual way to hold their lunch bunches. When we were in school, our team of student support people have students who voluntarily come to lunch bunches for various reasons for their social emotional health. A lot of 6th graders come in for transitional purposes, and And I have sat in, Annie has sat in on many of these to see the excellent work and support that our team is providing kids. And I want to just report to the Board of Ed that I'm very proud that that student support team is continuing through virtual world to have all of those lunch bunches. They've also continued to have support nearly 23% of our students who prior to closing our building required their support in one way or another throughout the school year. So in addition to the kids who are already on their rosters to be supported, they have picked up a lot of other children who, when we were in the building, seemed to have it all together. And I can verify that this pandemic is taking a toll on the mental health of some children.
Sure.
And it's concerning. On a positive note, I'm really excited that we have 100% of our staff who are offering Google Meets for their classes, who are recording live lessons and posting them, and doing incredible things to give children at this point in time feedback. And just a few examples I can give are ILA teachers who are asking our students to journal, to submit their journal writings, and giving them written feedback on that through this pandemic. It's an inordinate amount of time that these people are devoting in order to do the most important thing for students, and that's to give them timely feedback, even during a pandemic like this. Annie and I started these Keller Pride Picks every Friday that we send out at 4 o'clock, and we have a distance learning version of it, which are already showing some incredible creativity of our students, how hard they're working. Any student who's on here right now, I just want to tell you that we think you're doing a fantastic job. Over 90% of our students are right on target, and about 10% of our kids, we are constantly continuing to try to get engaged and stay and keep engaged. But I could tell you that every student is engaged, and that's amazing. And I just want to thank the students for working so hard in some very difficult, challenging times that we're having. I've communicated out to parents. Last week, I want to just let the board know, if you haven't seen it, that our student activities, our extracurriculars are now running virtually. They'll be meeting a number of times between now and the end of the school year. Thank you, staff, for getting that going for us. For the students, we are planning a closing ceremony for our 8th graders. It will be a virtual event. We're hoping to do it kind of like you reading in the newspaper, where kids will be invited to a specific date and time with their families and watch what we have produced for them to celebrate their time at Helen Keller. Also, we have a couple of community outreach projects going on, and our students, again, rising to any challenge we give them. We have 15 students right now who are assigned to senior citizen pen pals through the senior center, and 6 letters have already been sent from our students to the seniors. Val Buckley has told me, reported to me today, that the seniors got the letters and they're all really excited. And I'm very proud of the kids who signed up to do that. We still have about 5 seniors still waiting for assignments from our students. And Val tells me that she can fulfill any need that we have for students who want to have a pen pal. So parents, encourage your kids to do this. I think it's a really worthwhile thing to do to help with the loneliness that the seniors are feeling during this pandemic. And then we also have opportunities for students in the middle school to read books, elementary level books that we're sending over to Samuel Staples. And a few students have taken on that challenge, or not a challenge, but opportunity. And I would love to see more of that too. I will finish by just asking, yep, I'm going to finish. I know we have a lot to cover today. I'm encouraging anyone out there, parents, to look at our HKMS distance learning page. It has a lot of information about technology, any kind of questions that you have about our distance learning program, in addition to a list of all the communications sent out from our office and also from Dr. McMorrin's office. So thank you for your time, everybody, and I appreciate everyone's support.
Sue, thank you very much for that report. Let's go ahead and motion. And I'll just, I try to take some quick notes here. Sue, if I have this at all wrong, let me know. Motion to accept the PTO grant to Helen Keller, middle school music department for keyboards. The amount of money is $1,999.75. Jeez. Okay.
No motion.
Yep. John, do I have a second?
Yeah, second, sure.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Passes 6-0. Can't wait to hear what the kids are able to do with that. Okay. Is Kim up next? Okay. Kimberly, you're on. Actually, you're not on. You're muted.
Hi. I just went mute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned the coffee. I loved when Mrs. Hicks made us coffee. And I hope that Mrs. Hicks will make coffee in the future and that Mr. Hicks won't make the entire Hicks family go to San Francisco when watching the exact same Board of Ed meeting. Anywho, I also want to thank the PTO. My goodness, Mrs. Kelly and Team Kelly's, who put together the most fantastic virtual Teacher Appreciation Week, was really so appreciated. I go to the school every couple days a week to pick up the mail, and I could not believe the sidewalk and how you guys decorated it. You guys made a fantastic video. If you haven't seen Mrs. Kaldawi's video of kids showing signs of appreciation, I asked her to in some way share that with the Board of Ed. It was fantastic and made every member of our staff feel so appreciated. So thank you, ladies. I have a couple things that I wanted to share that I just thought stood out as good examples of how the Samuel Staples teachers have embraced distance learning. I have the good fortune of working with colleagues who really grabbed hold of this right away. They locked arms and said, yeah, we can do this. And each time I pop into either their Google Classroom or their team meetings, I'm really truly inspired by the creativity that these ladies really seem to enjoy. So here's just two examples that I think gives you a little flavor of the kinds of work that they're creating for their students to enjoy at their home. In grade 2, you guys know the familiar fairy tale of the 3 little pigs. Grade 2 decided to ask their students to build the 4th little pig's house. And instead of using typical classroom materials, they asked the kids to build a house out of recycled materials or items around the house. And the goal was for the students to build strong and sturdy houses that would protect the 4th pig from, of course, the big bad wolf. Students uploaded the pictures of their house on Seesaw and recorded themselves describing the materials they used and why they selected the materials that they did. And they used such creativity. They were an absolute pleasure to watch and enjoy. So I thank the 2nd grade team for putting together such a great idea. And one other or 2 others in 3rd grade that I really enjoyed. The 3rd graders worked on a project to wrap up their nonfiction reading unit, and the kids picked an article to focus on, and then they chose to create either a slideshow, a poster, or a newscast to demonstrate what they learned about in that nonfiction article. And the projects were great. And again, they shared links of the kids' newscasts, and it was just marvelous. David Muir has nothing on these kids. And then this upcoming week, I just loved this one. They're going to start a special time capsule project that they've not done before, where kids are going to be reflecting and collecting memories of this unusual time.
Good luck.
They have to do writing about how their routines have changed around their home, their learning, how they've learned new things and how they get their work done and how they're feeling about this distance learning. They may interview someone in their home And they're trying to focus on all the positives as much as possible. As Sue referenced earlier, what we have heard, from kids, from parents, is that emotionally they're really feeling disconnected from their teacher. Both Chase and Camden, who spoke previously, said it well. These kids really are lost without the guidance, the daily 6-hour and 45-minute guidance and cheering on that teachers do. And I worry for them. I worry about the return of school. And so I wanted you just to fully appreciate that we have a staff that is committed to doing what's right for kids, and hopefully they're enjoying most of it. But I want to thank my colleagues for working so hard. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is I'm having a very challenging time getting field trips monies returned to their parents. When we decided to cancel all the field trips in March, schools closed concurrently, and schools are not writing checks back to certain vendors, and vendors therefore providing us refunds because they keep such tight margins. So I want you to know, pursuing this on a weekly basis, conferring with organizations or their leaders to try to get these funds back to Samuel Staples so we can return the funds to our families. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Yes, Sue? Sue, you're muted. All right, now you're fine.
Thank you. I guess the virtual world is no different than when we're in the media center. I always forget one thing that I just like to add to my report.
Sure.
The transition of 8th graders leaving us for the high school is difficult because we're not saying goodbye personally. But another equally difficult transition that we know is coming up for 5th graders. And so I want to just share also that tomorrow afternoon at 1:30, we're going to have a 5th grade orientation virtually, where all students can meet their teachers, see their teachers who's going to interact,
Wow.
get to know them a little bit. I encourage parents to sit on the side if they are able, so you too can see the teachers' faces, because who knows if we're going to be able to have an open house in September like we usually do. So I encourage parents, and that's the only thing I wanted to add, to join in on that orientation so you too can get to see the faces of the people waiting and desperately wanting to work directly with the 5th graders. And 5th graders, it's going to be great.
Thank you, Sue. Okay. Next on the agenda is discussion and possible action. A is the healthy food certification and exemption for food and beverage items. Scott, are you gonna lead the charge on this?
There we go. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Yeah. So every year, this is an obligation that we have to pass 2 motions. They are both regarding the food service program that we operate. Our partner Chartwell's, of course, ensures that we remain in compliance with all of the requirements. And Dave Kennedy, who is the director of food services from Chartwell's, is on this call with us as well. So if we have any particular questions for Dave, we can bring him into it. The 2 motions relate to, the first one is a certification that we will continue to offer only food items that are in compliance with Connecticut nutrition standards. And so that's just something that we are required to do. The second one is an exemption that we also need to affirm annually to allow the sale to students of food items that don't meet the nutrition standards under certain restrictions. And that's such things as it's after the end of the school day, it's at a specific event, it's not from a vending machine or a school store. So obviously this allows us to sell things at the play or have a bake sale and those kinds of things.
Sure.
That's the intent of both of those, and I would appreciate a motion for each from the board.
Okay. I think you have those motions written in front of you, Scott.
I do. I can read it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. First motion is the healthy food certification for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year. The Easton Board of Education will continue to certify to the Connecticut State Department of Education that all food items offered for sale to students separately from a reimbursable lunch will meet Connecticut nutrition standards. Such certification shall include all food offered for sale to students at all times in all schools and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or by non-school organizations and groups. That's the first motion.
Okay. Will someone first support that motion?
So moved.
Okay, Randy, thank you. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Gretchen, okay. Any discussion on this?
I just have a question.
Okay.
Was the wording of the motions in the materials that were sent to us about the meeting? Did I miss that?
Yes, it was a supplemental distribution from Carla.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So if there aren't any more questions or discussions, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and now we have a second motion.
Yes, this motion is an exemption for food and beverage items for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The Easton Board of Education will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages that do not meet the requirements of state statute section 10221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided one, such sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, such sale is at the location of the event. And 3, such food and or beverage is not sold from vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. The school day is the period from midnight to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. The location means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the food and beverage sales.
Okay, do we have Randy? Okay, to support the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, John, thank you. Any discussion about this? Very good. All in favor, please raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Did I miss something here?
No.
Okay,
No.
I just didn't see the hands.
Yeah, maybe it
Okay.
lagged for a second.
All right.
You got everybody.
I saw everybody raise their hand.
Okay. Scott, thank you. The motion passed. Thank you very much for these. For those of you that are new to this, this is a yearly event. We do it at this time of the year. It simply reaffirms that we're going to follow the state laws and rules concerning food served in the school, and then food that's allowed to be served outside of the day, whether it be, as Scott said, bake sales or something at a football game or something like that. Okay, next is, this is going to be an exciting topic, 2020-21 operating budget. Tom, do you want to take the opening salvo, or would you like me to do it?
No, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I was going to quote St. Augustine to get us started, but I'm actually going to go for Dave Mason. You'll know the lyrics, there ain't no good guys, there ain't no bad guys, there's only you and me, and we both disagree. And so you have in your town of Easton, and by the way, you've got folks planning your 175-year anniversary right now, which I think is terrific community opportunity. And we can pause and say, gee, in the last 175 years, you've been through all kinds of things, and this is your latest challenge. We are also glad to see so many teachers online tonight. So many of the people participating, some because they're worried about their own employment and others because they're worried about their colleagues. So glad to have them here. I got to tell you, quite honestly, right from my heart, not from my head, I can't think of another time when the United States has declared war on an enemy and then gone on to say, let's reduce funding for the Army. Let's not pay for artillery. Let's not supply our troops and go out and win the war. And I am not in the slightest bit underestimating the impact of the economic crisis on top of the health crisis. I've got a kid in my home who lost her job. I got a sister and brother-in-law who spent 30 years building a company, and that company is sliding off the edge of the economic cliff and is unlikely to recover. So I'm highly sensitive to it. And I know that we have to make some adjustments to the budget, and that's why Jeff asked me to game out, what could some of those things be. So in examining your budget, remember, please, that 81% of it has to do with people. When you look at salary, benefits, insurance, substitute teachers, all that stuff adds up. It's people. And at the core of what we're gonna need are the good people who are working for you. If you remember when Katrina took out New Orleans, and you can call up in your own mind a memory of tens of thousands of people in the stadium there just not knowing where to go and what to do. That school system was shut down in its entirety for about 2 months. And when they got back into school, they were able to get back up to speed academically over time. Like many people, I'm concerned about the disciplines that build sequentially, about math, about how are we going to get from where we are to where we're going to need to be in the fall. And so I've asked Susan and Kim and the math specialists to think about how we could propose some summer bridge activities there, but we're going to address all of our academics. I'm far more interested in the cumulative needs of our children in terms of the social and emotional impact of being home for months, not being able to see their friends, not being able to do all the things that are joyous to a child. So when we are looking at this budget, I just ask everybody to remember that 80 cents out of every dollar is attached to a person in one way or the other. When we look at the other 20 cents, the other 20% of the budget, some of that is already pre-spent for you. Like your transportation costs are about 6% of your budget. And we took a bus out of the system already. And we don't know if and when COVID protocols will impact how we transport kids next year. But I don't think we can really look to transportation as a place to take any more funding. About 1.2% of the budget is to pay for kids who are outplaced into specialty schools. That's all determined by their individual education plans and their rights. The operations, the buildings and grounds, 5% of your budget. And we didn't build a budget that anticipated having to retrofit your buildings for distance learning, for increased hygienic distances. We're starting to map all that out now, but we're trying to do that while we're also trying to maintain the excellent quality of your education. So it's going to take us more time. And we're going to look to Hartford for more guidance on protocols for safely opening school and what school might look like next year. So I don't think we can take money out of your supply lines there. I did recommend on the Reading side of the world that we reduce their instructional supply lines, those related to academics, by 10%. But I cannot make that recommendation here because over time, we have so lowered and restrained the amount of supplies that we're providing, I'll remind you from the budget season, we're spending 52 cents per kid per day on instructional supplies. We just can't lower that line anymore. And then that leaves us with academic programs. That's part of it. That's 2.5% of your budget. That's what are we paying for in the classrooms once we've accounted for people. And then central office is just under 3.7% of your budget. And central office has not changed in its lean structure. So that means you're going to have to think about, as you make adjustments to the budget, how do you do that in a way that doesn't impact the classroom to the greatest degree? Now, before we go through some of those things, Jeff, I think that's what you want to do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just let me have, please, just a couple more minutes on what constituted the 4.2% increase. That was an increase of $707,500. And of that amount, $263,000 of those dollars was related to special education. And I know we're all trained to go, oh my God, special education, all that ever happens is the cost goes up. But I got to take that 263 and just get wonky for a minute, because of that amount, $128,000 is in the excess cost reimbursement line. In the current year, we qualified for a significant amount of reimbursement for the state based on the cost of individual kids. And in the coming year, we qualified for less, which means that from one year to the other, that's additional $128,000 that we just have to carry. That's not a bad thing, because it means that you have fewer kids getting to that super high cost level, but it's a reality for us to take in. So if I take 263 off the 707, we also had $72,000 because we're trying to restore the middle school librarian, the media specialist that we've been living without. And I do agree with those people who say, how can one of the premier schools in the state of Connecticut not have a robust media center when so much of the modern world requires us to understand multimedia and digital? We're having a crash course in it. But that was $72,000. And then we tried to restore the clubs and extracurricular activities, which is about $48,000. So we start taking those things out and we say, well, we couldn't not fund special ed. We're trying to restore things. Then you're down to an increase that is accounted for by contractually determined increases that are not princely, and your cost of insurance and your other cost of living adjustments. It's just important to me that you hear that number and you go, wow, 707, what were they thinking? Well, they were thinking, how do we provide for all the things we're obligated to do? So the task that Jeff gave me was to say, what, recognizing the extraordinary nature of COVID and the impact it's had on the community, what could we put on the table? And this is, I think we're a little out of order because the Board of Ed didn't get to talk about this before the Board of Finance did last night. And in talking with Sue and Kimberly and Scott and Stephanie, we first wanted to say, okay, what can we live without for a year? But it's not going to change our programs, and it's going to try to protect our workforce, our teachers. And that's let me just run through how we came up with the $241,000. And I'm sorry I can't project it on the screen for you. My own computer decided last night would be a good time for it to go a little wonky. So I'm using my beloved spouse's machine tonight. So let me take you through some of the items that we're suggesting. that you defer the media specialist again at $72,000. I really dislike betting on COVID-19, but what our experts are telling us is we've got to be positioned for another period of distance learning in next winter or fall or winter. If that's a reasonable assumption, then we looked at our substitute lines and took 10% from them. So 7,000 out of Keller, 10,000 out of Staples. And just a side note on how do we determine how much we think we need for subs? Well, it's based on past practice, but also on what we know about things like maternity leaves that we're anticipating or other reasons why people might out for a longer period of time. So when folks go, gee, you overestimated your substitute allocation, what we really should say is, wow, we had a good year. We didn't have the draw on it that we were planning for. So media specialists, substitutes, professional development, we have either reduced significantly or cut in half. The things that we would ordinarily not put up, but in COVID we do, are funding at Keller for upgrading our classroom libraries. All of the funding for upgrading and curating the library collection itself, that together is about $8,600. The summer curriculum work that has to go on to keep us aligned and moving forward, we cut in half, taking out $7,000 from Keller and almost $6,000 from Staples. Once again, the extracurricular program, holding on only to the yearbook at both schools, because we think this should be memorialized over time. That's $46,000 out of Keller, and it's the Show of Stars and Student Council about $5,000 out of Staples. We had asked for a very modest amount of $4,000 to help us work ER9 to look at start time studies of how we might look at our schedules. When do we start too early for some kids, too late for others? But we would postpone that. We had already in the budget really significantly truncated capital improvements. I'm sorry to add salt to the wound, but Staples is no longer a 4-year-old building. It's now 15 years old, and it's going to have maintenance needs. As you know, at some point you got to pay attention to the parking lot, but obviously not this year. So we did postpone some window security upgrades at Keller for almost $6,000. And then there's some hazardous material abatement that's required by law to be done by 2025. We were going to do that this summer, but that can wait. And then again, if we are in distance learning, we'll need less electricity. So we took 10% off of both schools. That's about $27,000. And then electricity. Again, did I just say that? And then there's we had budgeted for $4,000 for a pressure washer at the school. When I add that up, that's $171,890 out of Keller and $53,000 out of Staples. And then we also had recently a resignation of a teacher, and so we adjusted the salary allowance down by $16,200 for the rehiring. By the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is using my kitchen, so if you hear noise in the background, that's what's going on. So when I add that up, that's $241,000. We have not had more than just 20 minutes today for Susan and Tim and Stephanie and I to talk with each other about what would be an additional $135,000, which I believe is what was added last night, if I recall.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so again, we're running out of ways not to touch people. So the two other considerations, obviously none of these things are great, but I now have to move from make what reductions you can to impact the program. So these things are going to be, that I'm going to talk about, are impacting your program. So we had, the board had really thought about how can we improve the math program at the middle school. And the approach was we were going to go out and try to find a really veteran, accomplished educator because our 8th grade teacher has resigned. She went on maternity leave and has elected not to return. So we had set the hiring allowance at the top of the scale at step 16. If we were to change that from 16 to 8 and say to Susan, you have to find someone with up to 8 years experience, that could save us just under $26,000 in salary. I'm not wild about that, but I also think it's reasonable to believe that it's unlikely that someone with 16 plus years experience would be willing to give up a job that has seniority and tenure. So what I would like is to give Susan enough leeway to throw a wider net than another first-year teacher. And I love first-year teachers, nothing against them, but I would love to find a person a little more veteran to come in and consolidate that good work of 6th and 7th grade in an 8th grade position. Still in the field of math, we have offered that discrete math course as an elective for part of the enhancement of middle school math. And if we were to discontinue that class, that would reduce one teacher by one course, and it would save us $16,000. When I put those together, that's an additional $42,000 roughly. After that, it's difficult to see how we could not go on and take more teachers. And so the choices are, there's no good choice. I think the board might want to talk about how much you'd be willing to consider your health insurance. Maybe that's something for you to talk about in a little bit tonight. Yeah. Your allocation for that. But I can only go forward and say if I need to find, what is it, another 95,000 or so, it's not true that one teacher saves you $100,000. In education, it's the last person in is the first person out. That's just the way teaching works. So if you're junior, you're the most junior within your area of certification. When we cut, you're the person we cut. And if you're under the age of 26, as Jeff pointed out last night, the probability is you're not even on our insurance. So if we're looking at the least expensive teacher to try to find some of that money, you're going to be able to take about $56,000, not 100. And this is where you have to then consider, and maybe we can have Kim speak a little bit about this. When you're in a time of crisis, you go to your core values. What is it that we believe, and what is it we believe about our kids? And so we've always said that this school system is about more than test scores, that we're not just going to drill up to an impressive number. We're going to teach the whole kid in this loving community, and as a consequence, you're going to get good numbers. So if we have to now make a burden's choice between taking a classroom teacher away from Kim, we also should consider, do you need to address maybe your music program and have less of a music program? There's no place you can go now that's not going to hurt you. And so if one of the criteria is, do we need to change the program in order to pay the bills? I know some folks will say, well, you know, when I was in school, they didn't teach Spanish at the elementary school. Let's just get rid of the Spanish teacher. And you've made an investment now of more than 5 years in building kids' capacities so that when they get into the middle school, they'll be better able to acquire language and maybe by the time they're out of high school, actually be proficient in it. So that's an investment that we shouldn't just throw away right away. Can I have Kim, can I pause, Jeff, so that I can have Kim speak to the impact of losing a classroom teacher?
Sure, please.
Thank you. I shared with Tom earlier today that in my view, there are 3 serious things we need to think about when we make this decision. And for me, it comes down to 3 different things. Number 1, my greatest concern is the well-being of our kids socially and emotionally. I know firsthand from speaking to parents and hearing from teachers and to some degree hearing it from kids that they're really struggling. So I think we would be remiss not to consider heavily the resources that we're going to need in place when they do return in the fall. My second concern is that there's going to be anticipated academic loss across the board. I talk to the teachers all the time, and what I'm hearing is that there are some kids, usually the very motivated, driven kinds of kids, who do absolutely everything and participate in the same way in a distance learning as they do when they're in the classroom. But there's other kids who are involved intermittently, and it requires the teacher to pick up the phone and call the parent or contact the parent and say, hey, could we be partners to help get the kids to re-engage? There's a lot of that because parents are working. They don't have the time to sit hip to hip with their kids to get the work done. So I think we would be foolish not to anticipate a loss of academic skills across all areas. And then thirdly, what I didn't hear talk about last night, but I think that we need to talk about tonight, is the fact that I do believe we're going to need to ensure that these kids are socially distant from one another. And if we reduce a classroom section in any grade and increase the class size, we're not going to be able to ensure that the kids are protected in the way that we are recommended to monitor. There's going to be too many. I can't see the teachers, as gifted as they are and as dedicated as they are, being able to meet the kids' social emotional needs, because they're coming in with some weak areas that we have to reestablish them as students, so providing all the academic supports that they're going to need across the board to catch them up, and then finally keep them separated in a way that is safe. So for those reasons, I really would like to see the Board of Ed preserve the number of sections that I proposed in the Samuel Staples budget, and instead look at music. I think, well, I know because I sat and did the schedule, if we were to have just general music and eliminate the 5th grade instrumental program and the 4th and 5th grade choral program, so that all kids have general music and that's their one music instruction per week, we could eliminate a 0.8 of a position or some combination thereof. And in art, at Samuel Staples, we have 1.6 FTEs in art because our students, all K-5 students, have one 60-minute period of art over the course of the week. We could reduce that down to a 145-minute period of art per week and reduce the 0.6 FTE.
Okay, Kim, and the math on that. All the board members have the God, I hate to say it, the Parker report, and that'll give you the individual. It doesn't list people by name, but it lists them by class, and that'll give you a number in terms of what Kim is talking about.
It's not, I don't think it's linear, but because it's aggregated between a couple professionals, right? So
that's right. If we were to reduce from 1.6 to 1 art teacher, that would be about $60,000.
Okay. Gretchen, you had your hand up.
No, sorry, I was not able to unmute. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that, Gretchen. Would you like to speak?
No, I just wanted to make sure I could if I needed to. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good.
And for those who have not been in on every conversation, just a little history. We have the Board of Ed has reduced office staff in previous years. We've reduced the number of custodians, and this year, going into next year, we've reduced from a technology assistant in both buildings to one position that would be shared by both buildings. So, folks go, well, what about, can you look at your support staff anywhere? And well, we have, in previous years. So I don't think that we could look to custodians and still maintain the quality of the building. Particularly, we're going to have to increase class cleaning schedules. We really haven't gone out far enough in our thinking. Are we going to have to try to shift some of the night crew to come in during the day, or I don't know. I don't know what I don't know.
Okay, I'm sorry. Someone told me that the 0.6 was how many dollars?
It's 60. About 60,000.
60. Okay, that's what I thought I heard. Okay.
But Kim also talked about the music.
Yep.
Tom, what's that number? Or Kim, what's that number?
I think if we reduce music from 1.8, is that what it is now, Kim? Yeah, to 1.0 is about 62,000.
Okay. Are there more things, Tom, that you want to throw at us, or is this a time for the board to ask some questions?
I think it's time to do some questions.
Okay. And I don't know, I don't have this in front of me, but we increased the healthcare budget for 2021 by how much, Scott?
266,000.
Okay. And if we're going out on a limb, but going down the road of COVID 2.0, can we make an educated guess that might potentially, again, push back some healthcare costs? Said a different way, if we continue on the track that we're on, just like other regions, we're going to have a healthcare reserve that's larger than we've had in 6, 8, 10 years.
That's true.
So, and I understand we can't necessarily move that around, but we could reduce next year's budget by 100 or 135 or some other number. Is that?
I think you could. Maybe Scott, can you speak to that at all?
Yes. Thank you, John. Yeah, so Randy, I think what's happening, and Brown & Brown advised us on this, we're seeing a trough in claims. We've seen it hit a bit in March. It's continued through April, and their guidance is that it's likely to continue through May and June as well. Anything that's been elective has been either deferred by choice or because they couldn't access the medical facility itself. Their particular advice was there's not an expectation that those claims are going to go away. They're just going to occur at a different time. And so when we do budgeting for a year, it's an assessment of a projection of the anticipated claims experience for that year. So my expectation would be we're likely to see, if we have 3 months here at the back end of this fiscal year that are running, say 50,000 per month lower than what we would normally anticipate, I would add 150 to next year and say that's likely what we would see, just by the mathematics of the way the underwriting process works. I do think it's fair to say we don't tend to want to sort of trim X dollars per position, because it's a very, very variable thing on an individual level. An individual person can range from not having our insurance at all to having a full family on it, and as the case may be. However, if we have multiple positions, then I think there can be a legitimate consideration that says, in the aggregate, if we have multiple positions that are not going to be a part of the workforce next year, we could come up with a number to reduce it. I think it's a judgment call, because similarly, there's no magical way of knowing that I'm going to have $10,000 worth of claims in a year or $40,000 worth of claims in a year, for example. But I think in the broad strokes, we could associate it with a force reduction, but I don't think we could associate it necessarily with what we're seeing in regards to COVID at the moment.
Yeah. From my perspective, and nothing to do with the board, what I'm being told and what some folks are projecting is the elective surgeries, what have you, they're not possible now. They may not be possible for the next month or two. They start again when the healthcare system sort of reopens today or in a week or in a month. But that you're not going to have, I don't think anyway, at least not doctors working 18 hours a day to fit in 6 hip replacements where they've done 4 in the past.
Actually, so, Randy,
yeah,
that's not true. So the hospitals have already said that they are going to run the ORs more than normal.
Okay.
They're going to do overtime to catch up, because they know that there's a huge backlog.
And that's physically possible?
It's
I guess
physically possible, because they're just going to pay people overtime. I mean, the physician's not, but yes.
Okay.
Randy and Gretchen, to that end, I put in a call today to Rob Fitzpatrick, because we pay them for advice, and this is a very important point, and so we certainly need their advice. For those that were on the call last night, you heard that historically, they suggest that you have 2 to 3 months of what your average claims are in reserve for the unexpected spikes. That was all pre-COVID. I've reached out to them and asked them for a number that is post-COVID, or at least what their best guess is. And so, while I think we will have some money that we can move, I would like to get a professional opinion on what their expectations are, and then we can kind of move from there. It is an expectation that if our claims continue on the same road that they've been on, and the last 2 months, amazingly, is one is 145,993 and one is 145,991. If we were to get numbers like that for the last 2 months, then we would have a reserve balance in excess of $600,000. Now, historically, we haven't had anything close to that. But again, I think it would be wise to try to understand what the post-COVID whiplash is going to be before we reach into that fund, which may be why that tonight is not the night that we should plan on finishing this discussion about where we go from here, because literally this could make the difference between having a full music program or not, having a full art program or not. And I don't want to lose anyone if I can help it. So I'd like to have some additional information before we go down that road.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jeff. I also want to sleep on the prospect of, reducing the program for the 5th grade. My own 5th graders went through and learned clarinet this year. Even in this, they've been doing practices. And I mean, I can hear it no matter where I'm at in the house. But it's remarkable to hear kids who I thought were musical, like really play an instrument that they'd never even thought of before. It is a remarkable program, and would be a heartbreak to lose. So I'd like to. I mean, I get it. We gotta make hard decisions, but to be able to sleep on it, I think it would be unwise for us to try to close this out tonight.
Okay. Yep. Thoughts from others, Katie?
Well, Jeff, when do you think you may find the answer to your question?
Well, I would expect. Let's see. Today is what, Tuesday? I would expect to have something, if not by the end of the week, certainly the beginning of next.
Do you think we should have a special meeting maybe early next week to continue the discussion then once?
I think given this new format of being able to do this online, what I'd like to do is to actually get the document, report back to the rest of the board in terms of what their thoughts and feelings are, and then we can move forward at that point with setting up perhaps another virtual meeting that is special and just dealing with this issue. But it's not unthinkable that we can wait until June the 12th, which is our next meeting. I just don't want teachers sitting in limbo.
Yeah.
Wondering what's going to happen to me. That's a terrible place to be, and I'd like not to put them there if we could avoid it.
Yeah.
It's just a point of order. We do need to start putting together contracts for each of the teachers, generally something that the principals can take care of in a day or so. But we are usually by the beginning of June, we're able to tell teachers what their assignments will be, what grade levels they'll be working on. So I think just for logistics, you might want to consider having a special meeting, say the 21st of next Tuesday is a Region 9 meeting, and I now don't feel like I've put in a full day's work unless I have 2 or 3 board meetings a week.
Well, good for you, Tom. I'm actually sorry you feel that way.
Stockholm syndrome.
Sorry. Jenny, did I see you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been trying to jump in. I just want, Randy, thank you for shifting the conversation. I just wanted to get away from this. I mean, I appreciate everybody's putting time in and feedback and thought into, what are some possible cuts, Tom running down that list for us, and Jeff bringing all of that to the Board of Finance last night. But from my point of view, we're starting over. And I don't want to take any of this as, set in stone. I want everybody listening to know that, we're discussing the media specialist. We haven't cut the media specialist. And just like the Board of Finance last night shared that, of the however many dozens and dozens of letters that they received, that was one of the major things that people talked about. And to the extent possible that we can talk about health insurance, that we can talk about unspent funds, that we can talk about shifting things around to keep these buildings and people whole for when the kids come back. I would just hate for that media center void to still be there when they walk through those doors again. If there's anything we can do to scrape from another place or shift things from, like you said, things that just don't affect the kids so much. So Jeff, thank you. I encourage us to sit on this and gather as much information as we possibly can and push the final decision to a later date, to do everything we can in the meantime, to try to not go into people and teachers and those things that we think are so important.
I should just have a moment of full disclosure, because every time I talk about that media specialist, I happen to be married to a high school media specialist, and my mother's a retired high school media specialist. So I get smacked on both ears every time we have this conversation. And I do think it's important, but I'm also trying to be pragmatic about the realities of the town's abilities to pay things. And I'm sorry, I hope that I in no way come across as flippant or that I'm not highly sensitive to the economic impact on the town. And we're really thinking about that a lot. And Jeff, I think that the administrators would love to have a few more days to think about how else we could frame it. Today we had all of about 25 minutes to talk with each other.
Okay, well, then I think this has been a good conversation to this point. Let's table the rest of it. I will work on getting the information from our consultants. The principals can put some thought behind where, if there are other areas where money can be drawn. And we don't have to wait until June the 12th. If that puts our administration in the penalty box, I don't want to do that either. So once I get the detail of the insurance impact, then I'll be back to everyone with an update, and we'll work at getting a meeting set just as quickly as we can. Does that meet everyone's on the board's needs? Is that fair?
Jeff, I feel like the big piece or obvious piece that we're not talking about is unspent funds, and how what we anticipate, the number that's been kind of thrown around is that we could end up with about $600,000 perhaps at the end of the year. And there was just got a lot of debate last night about $333,000, and was that going to go into a fund? Was it not going to go into a fund, a holdover? So I mean, those are big numbers, and obviously it's expected that we're going to return some of that money to the town, but how is the remainder going to possibly help us through this?
That's a very fair question, and that's something that we should certainly put in the rinse and dry cycle and make that a part of our discussions as well. Understand that the only place that we can put funds, because the non-lapsing account was not approved last night, is into healthcare. And so you also don't want to set yourself up to putting a lot in, taking a lot out, and then having to go back next year and say, well, our healthcare reserve has to go up $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 because of the gymnastics that we went through to make things the way we wanted it for next year. So again, it's a balancing act. It's just like everything else, and we'll certainly have it. We'll certainly. I think probably the best thing to do is first we need to understand what our consultant tells us about what that balance needs to be. And that's kind of the linchpin. And then once we know that, then I think we can have discussions about what else we can do and how else we can do it. But I think the important thing is let's do first things first and get that information.
Jeff, can I just throw one last piece in the mix there? Is just
Sure.
that I haven't poured through the budget binder in fine tooth detail in the last week or so. But if is there anything in there as far as because isn't capital improvement another area that we can use funds for? So I just didn't know if there was anything material. I mean, because let's face it, every $500,000, $2,000 matters when we're trying to put this together. So
yeah,
if there's anything in there.
Yeah, when you look at the capital lines, you'll see that the practice we've adopted is coming up with the things we would like to do, and then only actually putting the dollars in to the cumulative costs for those things that we most wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So that was the upgrade of the window at Keller, the abatement of the hazardous materials. That's 5,700 and 4,500, and then the pressure washer for Staples at $4,000. Those are three things that I've already put on the mix. There's nothing else in capital at this point.
Okay.
Can I just interject here for a second? So this raises an interesting point, and I'm going to go back to a point that Andy made last night, which was interesting also in the sense that we found ourselves with extra money. He said, well, why didn't you hire the media specialist then? Okay, so and let me back up to what Tom was just talking about. We budgeted for next year certain capital items with schools and what have you. We're taking that money back out, but we're ending this year with 600,000 unspent, 500,000 unspent, 700,000 unspent. And pre-COVID, we probably would have ended the year at 100 or 300,000 unspent, give or take, for all the reasons that we know about now, which is breakage and different costs that just don't materialize, or things that occurred during the course of the year, a resignation, what have you. We replaced them with a long-term sub, $30,000 drops to the bottom line. I'm pretty sure, because it happens most every year as long as Scott has been around, we're going to end next year with some modest surplus. Might be 50,000, it might be 350,000. Why don't we budget these things? Maybe I didn't know the answer to it, but it seems we're stuck with a number of 17,015,000.
Right.
And we're going to cut everything to get to that number, and we're going to end up spending 16.9 next year. And then
we hope that we can manage. I mean, the ideal situation is that we only spend 98% of our budgeted dollars, not 101. And we have done that for the past couple of years. We know that next year, for instance, that all of the unions will be on the high deductible HSA. The past 2 years, our claims have been much better, and that's with two out of the four bargaining units on the HSA. I'm not giving the HSA all the credit, but certainly that's been a mitigating factor. But can we count on that post COVID? That's just very hard to say.
I thought Randy was heading in a different direction, which was these things that we're taking off of the funding. Could you pay for them this spring, like the window or the abatement or whatever? You could. Mm-hmm. I think your practice has been to try to get 1 year's funding for 1 year of education. But once the allocation is given to the Board of Ed, it's the Board of Ed's discretion on how it gets dispersed.
I guess I am sort of going there, Tom. The analogy to me is an airline has a plane that holds 175 people, and they book 190 tickets, and they hope 175 show up. We've got 17,015,000 allocated to us for next year, and we're going to allocate that, but we're not going to spend that. And I get, once in a blue moon, hopefully we had 2 terrible years and however many of healthcare. But aside from that, we just know there's going to be intermittent things that happen over the course of the school year that are going to save us dollars. Now, there may be something with special ed or whatever that reverses it. We know that too. And maybe we've just been living a charmed life the last couple of years, and that we've had unspent funds that some we've been able to allocate to healthcare and do a couple of projects here and there. I don't know. I'll think about this more, but I feel like we need to allocate 17,100,000. And some of that might be in these capital projects, or we allocate some of these, significant unspent dollars this year, 10% of it to some things that we really truly need that we're going to pay double for down the road if we don't take care of some maintenance items and other things. Anyways, that's.
Yeah, I think you're at the perennial difference between the duty of the Board of Education and the duty of the Board of Finance, both having important tasks. Your job is to come up with an itemized estimate of what you think the year is going to cost. And what the Board of Finance would like is a to-the-penny price tag for budgeting purposes. And neither side is wrong in that. But my analogy isn't the airplane one. It's you're saying, I'm going to drive my car to Chicago, and I'm going to try to use an estimator now to think how many gallons of gas am I going to need to get from here to there. And someone saying to you, I want that projection to the pint. I want you to run out of gas when you get to your destination. And we say we can't do that. I also think one of the reasons that in Easton you almost always have a margin are the hundreds of decisions that the Director of Finance is making over the course of the year, or that the administration, the central office is putting on the building people, or the building in turn are. We're trying to spend the money we need to spend, but not more than that. And frankly, I think you're doing it the right way here. I'm going to confess, I do feel frustrated when in a normal year we have a few tens of thousands more than perhaps you wanted, and people go, wow, that makes you such a lousy money manager that we still have that money left over. Because I tell you what happens in pretty much any district you want to choose is sometime in March or April, they go, okay, boys and girls, what do you want? Let's start spending it down because we don't want it to look bad. But we've always said we're going to ask for what we think we need, and we're going to spend what we have to. But it doesn't mean that you couldn't do some pre-investing now in terms of capital work, because you can improve the windows at any point. You can do that kind of stuff but we haven't actually looked at that. We can and come back to you on some suggestions. Okay. And just while I'm sorry, one more thing.
Sure.
I know I'm talking too much. It's fatigue related. Why didn't you hire a media specialist in the middle of the year? Because that's not a season at which I'm going to get any applicants. Who am I going to be able to hire in January for a job that runs from August to June? Even if I wanted to do it, the pool would be as small as anybody who happened to finish getting their librarian's degree or media specialist degree in the January at the end of the first semester. Just can't. It's your pool of best candidates runs from about March to August.
Yep.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this, or shall we move to the next item on the agenda?
Move along.
And somewhere I've lost the agenda. I think it's the reopening of school.
Yes.
Oh, good. Nice guess on my part. Well, Tom, I think that's your lead, or is that Stephanie's? Yours. Okay.
A little bit of both of ours. We are. Let me pass it over to Stephanie. We are anticipating some guidance from Hartford as early as Friday about some plans for reopening, as well as some more guidance on ceremonies. But we've got a committee working. We've got several models from other states that are a little bit ahead of us on this. Let me just pass it to Dr. Pearson-Ugel.
Thank you. So as you all can imagine, the plans to reopen are complex and at times a bit overwhelming. We, on a daily basis, are receiving information from other states and also from other countries. So we are hopeful that our state will offer some more black and white guidance that will help us in our planning. But just to give you a sense of the categories that we are looking at in terms of our work to reopen our schools, the categories include scheduling in every flexible manner you can imagine, from a straight typical schedule to staggered entry to flexible days of the week to hybrid distance learning and in-person learning to we begin in person, then we move to distance learning. So scheduling has taken on an entirely new meaning in this research. The category of cleaning, hygiene, and safety, which, as you can imagine, also includes personal protective devices, our ability to take the temperatures of staff and students, the need for us to provide some type of an isolation area if someone becomes ill while on our properties, transportation, which of course is also very complex because there's an overlap then with cleaning and disinfecting and scheduling and how we do that in a way that is efficient as well as being safe. Academics. So we've learned a great deal through this time in distance learning, and we need to take what we've learned and then figure out how we can be innovative and effective in our plans for next year, again, considering the many different configurations that might be possible. So a part of this is also considering the many technology resources that we've been using during this time that have been offered for free for companies that will most likely no longer be free next fall. And so how we are going to prioritize what we need and then figure out how to provide for our students the best that we can. Counseling. We have heard from Dr. McMorran, from Ms. Fox, from Mrs. Kaplan, that the social and emotional needs of our students is absolutely the first priority. We know that our students are going to need a lot of support, and we believe that welcoming them into our school buildings once again, into the arms of their teachers, is probably the very best way that we can do that. But we also are aware that our counseling and our support staff will have their hands full. So we need to be able to provide for our students in that way as well. In whatever protocols we develop with the guidance of the CDC and from the state, we are going to have to develop training protocols and then provide time to train staff members in those protocols, because while we can train the adults in a way that might be very effective when you're working with young kids, we know that things often don't work perfectly, especially when you're suggesting that young children always stay 6 feet apart from one another. Special education has its own category because we are certainly concerned about the needs of our students who receive special education services and their plans for reentry, what their summer program might look like, and again, hoping for additional guidance from the state, and then what their programs might entail next year, which could include some compensatory services. Our facilities are going to need a lot of attention. So we're going to need to consider the spaces, how students enter the building in the morning, through the many different doors possibly they enter the building so we can limit congestion. how they move throughout the building or don't move, as the case may be. We've seen some examples of students really staying in one spot and having the adults move around, again, so that you're limiting congestion, you're limiting the opportunities for kids to congregate, what it looks like to serve meals if we don't want to bring all students to a cafeteria, and then how they're going to get exercise. We want them staying in one place all the time. So that's a lot to consider. Family engagement and communication. How are we going to keep our families engaged when we most likely will not be allowing visitors into the building? So how are we going to dismiss for the families that pick up? And then how are we going to keep families engaged and keep everybody in the loop? And then finally, personnel. There are so many variables for us to work out in terms of our teachers, our support staff, our leadership team. We need to be cognizant of our staff members that might have medical conditions that make their return particularly anxiety provoking, or those who might be of an age where they're concerned about their own safety and well-being. So Dr. McMorran and I have been working closely with all 3 teacher associations throughout this time. We will continue doing so, but there are many, many details to be worked out.
Stephanie, thank you very much for that. That's daunting. Would really understate what the administration is going to be looking at, and I'm glad we're on a track to consider all the different options, and I know you'll be keeping us updated going forward in terms of where we are in the process. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. Any questions for Steph?
I see Jenny.
Jenny, okay, sorry. Yep.
Stephanie, thank you. Like Jeff said, I can't even believe what I'm hearing. The thing that that pops into my head immediately is why. We're talking so much about the trauma that kids are going through, the social, emotional fallout from COVID. Is there any discussion about, do we want to open school under these conditions? Like, I'm having a hard time picturing our littlest kids, stay 6 feet apart, walking around a building where people are wearing masks, all these cleanliness procedures. I mean, this just sounds like such a high stress environment. My question is it going to be worth it? I know we need to think about childcare, like families can't go on forever without their kids going to school, but I don't know that I would send my kids. I have to be totally honest with you. Thinking about my Piper going into kindergarten next year under these conditions, I know we have to abide by state statutes, but I'm wondering, is there a conversation happening or thought to have a conversation broader than this? Like, do we want to do this if this is what it's going to look like when we go back?
Yeah, there's absolutely conversations going on beyond individual districts. The superintendents are also meeting weekly. We're trying to coordinate and try to get countywide or east of the river, west of the river conversations going, so that there's parallel instruction. We do have we would need guidance from Hartford if we weren't going to go. I have a little mnemonic that we used when I was head of school at the high school about the building, and it was CHASE. Is it clean, healthy, attractive, safe for education? And I think we need to work starting now into the summer on coming up with a plan. Even if the plan doesn't get put in place, we need to start thinking about layers of decisions that need to follow various decision trees. But I can tell you it looks like estimates as many as 16% of college kids are planning on not going back unless they can actually go to a school. So I don't know, but it is part of the conversation we're having. I see question.
Is there any inkling, or you hearing anything from Hartford about the fact that, I mean, there's no way a Board of Ed could think about funding some of these things now? I mean, is it possible that at some point Hartford says, you know, whether they or towns have to, you know, figure something out post regular budget season? I mean, PPE alone is outrageously expensive. I mean, with the budget we have now, we're not going to be able to do most of this. It's a totally different conversation in my mind. So just wondering if you're hearing anything.
So those conversations are going on. There's the, you know, I had shared with you, maybe I'll send it out again, an invitation from the Regional Service Center for people to weigh in on the Thought Exchange website. There are 6 groups working across the state on trying to identify all of these issues. Hartford, as you know, doesn't work in 6th gear. It takes its time. I think they think they're moving at lightning speed, and they are trying hard. The Department of Education at Hartford is understaffed and has been for a long, long time, and, you know, a lot of pressure is being put on them. I'm sorry to say it, but we know what happens when there's discretionary funding. It goes to the alliance districts, it goes to the cities, and very little of it comes back to you. So I know that that the governor and our Congress people, our senators, are trying to lobby the feds for more funding, you know, specifically about education. You gotta be writing to your reps, and you got some good ones here, and Ann and Tony and Will. So I'd encourage you to write to them. I know you want to move on, Jeff. I gotta say, if things are going well for people in terms of the transition to distance learning and the grade level teamwork and what teachers are doing, the credit really belongs to Stephanie Pearson-Ugal, who has been the quarterback getting all of these things lined up: curriculum, instruction, organization, timelines, meetings, professional development. I mean, really, Stephanie's shaking her head because she's a team player, but you really got to assign credit where it's due. I asked her to be the quarterback, and the administrators all are looking to her, and she really deserves recognition there. And then while I'm giving shout outs, look at Christine Calvert in her office at 9:30 again, making the town work. And Christine has been so responsive to me personally. Anytime I have a question and I need something, I hear from her right away. So two women our town are very fortunate to have, among others.
Amen. Amen. Any other thoughts, questions on this topic? If not, okay. I have a D, because this is a regular meeting, I can add it. So I'd like to, I'll entertain a motion to add D, and it is the approval of a letter that this Board of Education will send to Region 9 in support of Region 9 returning funds from their surplus back to the towns, and therefore back to Easton. Gretchen has been working on this. Gretchen, can you? Well, first off, I need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, John. Do a second. Randy. Okay, thank you. Gretchen, can you share what you've worked on? I know that she sent a copy of this to all the other board members seeking input, and so if you'd share with everyone what we're going to be sending, and then if anybody's wanting to understand the why behind this, I'd be happy to do that for you. You're muted.
Thank you. I'm sorry. My dogs are going crazy outside, so I keep muting myself.
Okay.
It says, "Dear members of the Region 9 Board of Education, all members of the Easton Board of Ed strongly encourage you to return every dollar possible from your final surplus back to the towns of Easton and Reading. We understand the desire to provide some added dollars to your pension fund, as well as retain a potentially larger than recommended balance in your healthcare reserve and keep funds for capital projects. But this still leaves a significant balance that can and should be returned back to the towns. We feel that the correct way to view this is as an offset to the 2021 town budgets, as opposed to a refund to the towns. It is money that R9 did not spend this year and is therefore money the town does not have to tax its residents to achieve our 2021 budget goals. With the governor's announcement that distance learning will be in place for the rest of the year, your projected surplus from your objective summary will be in the $1,600,000 range. For Easton, that would mean a return of about $530,000. Respectfully, the Easton Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you, Gretchen, for that. Let me give you the why, and then we'll open it up for a discussion. So we went through this last night, and the Board of Finance gave us a number. And there was some feeling that, okay, well, we're done here. Well, in fact, we're not done. This would be no different if they had approved a budget for us. We went for a referendum vote. The vote failed. Then the Board of Finance would come back to the Board of Education and every other business unit in the town looking for a change in their budget. So until the Board of Finance approves the town budget, there is a chance that there could be a change in the way that they approach this. Certainly, I heard last night in their discussions the expectation that they were going to be receiving money back from Region 9, and I don't know what their reaction would be if those funds weren't coming. But my guess is that it wouldn't be very good. So I want to make sure that the Region 9 has a formal letter from the Easton Board of Ed, encouraging them to send back everything that they can, because it will serve us as a Board of Education, and it'll certainly serve the town as well. Now, with that, any questions from board members?
I have one. I guess, and I'll defer to Scott on this, but I don't think they can take the money. In theory, the unspent monies by state statute has to come back this year. They can't, I don't believe they can take the $1.6 million, back out pension, back out capital monies, net $1.2 million, and then return, and then take that 1.2 million and offset 2021's budget. I think by state statute, they have to give it back to the town. But I'll defer to Scott.
Oh, Scott?
Get him. Yep.
There you go.
Thank you,
Did you hear Randy, Scott?
I did,
Okay.
yes. No, you're exactly right. If the monies are not expended for this fiscal year, they would quote unquote return to the town. I'll just briefly a little bit of how the sausage is made. They don't actually have the money. We request it on an every 2-week basis, really to the penny. So it's money. That's why I like to refer to it as unexpended. We never actually drew it and expended it in the first place. We came short of the full allocation.
So in the net effect, I mean, they talked about this last night. The town's going to dig $3 million into whatever reserve account they call it, and then, but at the next day, there's $1.6 million that's still left in there, or returned, if you will, because Region 9 didn't take their full 24 million, and we didn't take our full 16.7 million or whatever. So
right, and yes, Randy, that's true, and there's also $600,000 coming back from the town for funds that weren't spent this year as well. A lot of that, I think, is from Public Works. I don't have the detail, but certainly they didn't spend much money on snow removal. So, but anyway, the number that I saw in some email, I guess it was actually in a budget document, was that they're expecting 600 back from the town. They're counting on the Region 9 money, and they're certainly counting on surplus coming back from us as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I won't repeat this again because I'm tired, but you know, they have 1.6 million, 1.8 million, 1.4 million in a healthcare reserve. You know, we might end the year at 600 and we're trying to take 100 out of that or something out of that and offset next year. They've got 3 times that almost, or they may. And to me, that's where they could offset next year's budget and have a significant impact, potentially another significant impact. But that's for the Region 9 board to, to
right.
determine.
Right. How that works is they would look at their current budget, which they want to approve at their earliest opportunity, and which of course don't we all, and they could take down their 270 and their 271 account down to lower levels, and it's a trickle down effect where we would get 42 cents on those dollars, while Reading would get 58 cents on the dollar. But all that said, is there any other discussion about the letter? I hope I explained the purpose properly. Yeah, Jenny.
Yeah, Jeff, I appreciate your concern about the Board of Finance. You know, heaven forbid this doesn't come back around the way we expect it to, but I would prefer we don't send this letter. I'm not on board with it. I think you've made public comment at their meetings. I've made public comment at their meetings. Board of Finance has talked to them. It was well vetted and discussed at the meeting where Todd presented to them. You know, I feel like it's well covered territory and they already know how we feel about it. I'm concerned that this is bordering on pushy. You know, and we're in our own precarious position with looking at health insurance and looking at unspent funds at the end of the year, trying to make things work for us. I'm hesitant to send this. I mean, I appreciate the work that Gretchen did writing it, you know, and I do understand the sentiment behind wanting to do it, but I just don't think it's necessary.
Any other?
That's just me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you finished? You were? Okay. I didn't want to cut you off. Any other thought or discussion about it?
I tend to agree with Jenny.
Okay, I'm not concerned about that. I mean, I appreciate your thought on that, and I can see that on the one hand, but they're in a unique position, and as a Board of Finance and a Board of Education, and I still feel like, you know, well, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not concerned about being pushy, or I don't think it's being pushy. I think it's representative how I feel, and if we vote and it's 3-3, then maybe we don't send it. If it's 4-2 or 6-0, whatever, we do or we don't. But I'm not concerned about that. I think Todd knows that, you know, because we're all in this together, sort of. But at the same token, it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal to the town, and I think it's important and wise to make our opinions known, although maybe our opinions aren't 100% unified. So,
am I still unmuted? I didn't say that our opinion is not unified. I just think it's already been clearly expressed and strongly expressed by several of us. I mean, I know that Board of Finance members have spoken with them about it. I've talked with Maureen at length, you know, about it. I've spoken with Juliet at length about it. I just don't think it's any secret how the board feels about it. You know, we've been present at their meetings and discussed it, and I'm just a little uncomfortable with this continued push. I think at some level we have to say we've said our piece and let them work the problem.
Okay, I understand. listen, I like it when, and I know you do too, when all the parents and other stakeholders in town show up to the Board of Finance and or have banners behind them on Zoom calls that say support the budget. So I'm okay pushing the envelope. I'm okay reiterating it for the 15th time if the first 14 times didn't quite work.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we have motion on the floor to send this letter. All in favor, please raise their hand. 2, 3, 4. Okay, four yes. All opposed? 2. Okay, it passes. The letter will be sent. I think in the interest of speed, although I don't have a strong feeling about this one way or the other. Gretchen, if you would send it as an attachment to an email to all of, all right, let me think about the proper protocol. Should we send it just to Todd, or should it go to each board member? I'm open to suggestion.
I think Todd, sorry. Good.
Can I just ask a question about this? I'm unclear about how a vote of 4-2 gives passage to make a statement on behalf of all of us when
it says all of us.
This isn't, are we going to fund extracurriculars or not, and a choice is made or a decision is made. This is putting a communication out there. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm opening discussion. I don't mean to be breaking protocol here, but maybe there's no, I don't know. This just doesn't seem right to me.
Question. I recall that the content of the letter itself says we all agree. Clearly not, that's not the case.
So then we either take names off or we don't send.
Yeah, I think it's wrong for us to be able to vote that Jenny agrees that we should send this letter.
Well, how would Jenny and Katie feel if we left their name off?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's okay.
Well, it's just like any of us sending a communication, right?
Right.
I guess my initial thought on this was, to be honest, Jenny, the first letter in everyone's inbox was before the Board of Finance meeting. And I did not get a reply, which is neither here nor there. But timing, yes, I agree with you in some respects, maybe is a little bit off at this point. But my initial question, I think I had asked Jeff, was, can we as a board send a letter to another board, since we all felt this way, before you had gone and said something individually at public comment and Jeff had said something? I thought, can we as a board say something to them? Now it's a few weeks later, which I understand. But I kind of agree with Randy. I still think it's relevant, but I'm fine to pull it too.
Again, I think the thinking behind this is that our budget has been given to us, but it hasn't been approved. And I would hate to have to come back to the table because anyone interpreted from Region 9 that, well, they have their budget set by the Board of Finance, so they don't, so this money thing really doesn't matter anymore. It does matter, and it'd be a very hard pill to have to come back here and sit down and have people say, well, why didn't you confirm it one more time to the Region 9 board when you had the chance? I don't think anybody in the Region 9 board is going to think that we're trying to push anybody around. It's their money, it's their decision. It'll just make a heck of a difference to us. I think it was part of the thinking why we got 32,000 instead of zero, because they knew they had money coming back from different sources. And I'd hate to be sitting here having to look at cutting more teachers because the Region 9 board made a different decision.
Well, the Board of Finance hasn't typically operated that way with us in the past, taking Region 9. I know they're looking at the big picture, but we've actually been fortunate, I think, that they don't take numbers like a shift in population at Barlow and then make us try to like push that pressure onto K-8. I mean, I don't think we should spend any more time tonight discussing this. I mean, we voted, let's move on. But as a board in the future, like John brought up, I just think this is a little bit of a sticky kind of vote to have.
Well, again, if you don't want your name on it, or Kay doesn't want her name on it, well, we'll take your name off.
Okay. I think we can communicate about that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Via email or offline. I think we can move on.
Sorry, Tom.
Okay.
But thank you.
If I can, I can't keep my mouth shut. I know I should. I tend to think in a 3-board structure that it should be the board chair to the board chair. And I've certainly asked for that in Reading when the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed start going back and forth. I think it's good hygiene for decisions made by one board to be for the chair himself or herself to be the person to communicate with the other one. So your language could be on behalf of the board, signed by Jeff. Then you don't.
That's fine too.
That threads the needle nicely.
Okay, well then we'll move forward with that, and we'll decide that. We'll decide. I don't know that we can decide it offline because we have now discussed it in public.
Right, but I think you and Gretchen can finalize the language, right, and you can send it per that. I don't think we did. I mean, are we saying that because we voted on that specific language, nothing can be changed?
Well, we approved that letter.
Okay.
So if we're not going to approve that letter, then it needs to be.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion that we give you and Gretchen the power to amend the letter to reflect the views that we've just expressed and the guidance that Tom has provided? Second?
Need a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Fine with me. Okay, very good. District administrative update. Tom,
I don't think we have more for you tonight.
Okay.
Unless Scott has anything.
Okay, yeah.
Nothing urgent. Happy to.
Okay, public comment.
Again, for everyone, if you raise your hand, either wave at us if your video is enabled, or raise your hand by using the participants window. You may need to hit the participants. I see Todd. Hi,
hey, Todd.
Todd, you're unmuted.
Yep, thank you. So I do appreciate the fact that you'll send our board a letter. That's great to capture your sentiment. I did like to say that Region 9 has already gone on public record. I've been to both the Reading Board of Finance, Easton Board of Finance, and I've talked with both board chairs that we are committed to giving any of our unspent money back, as well as funding some other things like capital and pension. We've already committed a range between $330,000 to $540,000 for Easton, which is about 42% allocation from last year, and $440,000 to $735,000 to Reading, which is about 57%. The Region 9 Board of Education has a meeting next Tuesday to go over our unspent funds. And hopefully at that point, we can come to an actual number to communicate to the towns what the actual dollar will be. We'll also read your letter if you can get it to us before then. And we will, again, try to communicate what the actual amount will be that we'll give back to the towns. We normally do that in June, but we're trying to move up our schedule to help accommodate both the other Board of Eds and their budget and to help the towns. So we are committed to giving money back. Appreciate your letter to help enforce that you would like us to give money back, but we have committed already in public and will continue to give money back to the towns to help out. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Todd. Any other public comment? Devin.
So I missed the first part of the meeting because I had another meeting. I'm busier, I think, in quarantine than I was when I wasn't. But I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all the work that each of you are doing. I know this is soul crushing and nobody wants to be in the position of cutting teachers or programs because each of you cares so deeply about our kids. And to the administrators and teachers on tonight, as someone who has two little people at Samuel Staples, you are keeping our family whole, and I greatly appreciate everything you're doing. And I'm sorry that this town has made a financial decision that will impact your ability to care for our kids, but I know that each of you will do everything in your power to make sure that in the fall, whatever it looks like and however different it may be, that our kids are safe, that they are well cared for, and that they receive a great education. So, and I will keep fighting for each of you because you fight for our kids. So I just want to say that, and I want to say thank you.
Devin, thank you. Could you give your address for the record?
Sure, 31 Woodland Drive, Easton, thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Do you see anyone else, John?
Raised hands. Oh, Nikki.
Oh, Nikki. Okay, sorry, didn't see you.
Sorry, just real, Nikki Caldawi, 99 Staples Road. With you guys were talking about the unspent money, and I think that you guys have done a really nice job of respecting the town by not spending when spending doing capital things this year that could be put off, and I really appreciate that. But when the Board of Finance isn't giving us money back to education that was used for education, like, I just think that we might want to take a look at that and see if we can use some of that stuff before the end of the school year, because if they're not gonna be respectful back in that sense, I just think it's something that we have to think about and try to utilize that.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yep.
Any other comment? John, do you see anyone?
I do not. One person just joined, so I just want to give her a chance to, in case she was joining specifically for public comment or coming from the YouTube. So looks like no.
Looks like no. Okay. Board member comment. Oh, I guess I've got to call on people. Sorry. We'll start with Jenny. We'll start at the bottom of my screen and work my way up. Jenny, any comment?
No, I think I'm all set. I'm just glad that we're giving ourselves some time and space to figure this out.
Okay. Thank you. Katie, any comment? I'm sorry, Katie, you're not. Okay.
I know, I'm trying.
Okay.
Is it? Oh, no, just to thank the administrators and thank the teachers for continuing to educate our children so wonderfully under such tricky circumstances.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Randy?
Nope. Have a good night.
I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. I didn't mean to laugh quite so much. John Stinson?
Thank you to all of our supportive members of the community. 77 people still here. We've got 25 people still on the YouTube stream. Unbelievable. It's, almost 10 o'clock. Thank you for the community to show up and to care about this and pay attention. And oh, by the way, you did it last night and you've done it at all these meetings. And I appreciate it so much. Obviously, our administrators who get to wake up tomorrow morning and show up to work and have the energy for the kids. Thank you as well. And thank you to our partners on the Board of Finance, our partners in Region 9. While we may disagree on a few things amongst a few of the people in the community, I think overall we care about the community, we care about the kids, and we are trying to do the right thing. I really feel proud to be part of this community.
Very good, John. Thank you. I just have one little thing. Next at the next board meeting will be, one of the agenda items will be officer election for a board chair and for a secretary to the board. You may recall that 80 people are on this call, so no, you wouldn't recall. But back in December, the board made a decision for me to continue as the board chair through this year to get to go through the budget process. The way that the way it was set up was that it's 2-year Republican, 2-year Democrat, 2-year Republican. This is my 6.5 year, because in 2015-17 there wasn't a person from the Democratic side that was interested in the chairmanship, so I kept it. And so in on June 12th, or perhaps earlier, if we're going to have a special meeting, because I get information back from Rob Fitzpatrick that will allow it, we will have the opportunity to see who on the Democratic side would be interested in being the chair. I know one guy who I hope is still interested, and he hasn't gone running out the door and screaming down the street saying, what nut would possibly do this job? But the secretary position is also open, and so I hope board members will consider it, and look forward to the next meeting to have those elections and make those changes. Beyond that, that's it for us. Can't thank my board enough for all the conversation, and certainly to all the parents. Thank you so much for being here. And administrators, gosh, you're going to get a chance to go to bed, and it's only 9:54. Only 9:54. Woo-hoo.
I don't know how to get somebody's attention on here. I don't know if you can hear me. I
heard woo-hoo.
There's messaging going on in the background about people on YouTube trying to make public comment. I don't know if there's anything we do about it at this point. I just wanted to bring it up. Is there any way that people would need to encourage people to send?
Yeah, they would need to jump on the Zoom, right? So that if you're not making public comment, you can just be on the YouTube. And if you want to be, it shouldn't be a problem. The next time we upgraded 20 minutes before this meeting started, and there was a lag, I guess, but we should be able to take 500 people next time. So it shouldn't be an issue in the future.
Okay. I guess just one final closing comment would be then, if you didn't get an opportunity to say something in public comment, just send us an email. We're always accepting feedback from the community, and you can always reach us that way if you have something to say about any of the discussion tonight.
Very good. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Katie. Okay, thank you. All in favor? See you soon. Good night.
Good night.